Now we're being joined by our special guest, Melchior Szczepanik from the Institute of International Affairs, to discuss also other countries which are waiting in a pipeline sort of to join the EU. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Delighted to have you with us. So let's start and unpack this whole issue, right? Because we have Western Balkans, Georgia, Moldova, also Turkey trying to join, aside from Ukraine, of course, the EU. So how will this all happen, and sort of who will join first?
Well, if you listen to decision makers and analysts in Brussels, when they talk about enlargement, they claim that enlargement is a geopolitical imperative. And this means that they realize that if the EU does not enlarge, if the EU does not respond positively to the ambitions of the candidate countries, then they will be in danger of falling prey to authoritarian ambitions of regimes such as Russia, but also China. So by enlarging, the European Union is trying to cement, to reinforce the area of prosperity, peace, and security around its borders. But of course, it's not that easy, because the enlargement cannot happen in a day. It's a long-term process, and both the EU and the candidate countries have to prepare properly for enlargement. So in order to become members of the European Union, the candidate countries have to already achieve a certain level of political, economic stability, because, of course, the European Union wants to export stability, and it does not want to import problems from the outside.
Understood, Mr. Szczepanik.
It is a long-term process, but of course, quite a lot depends on the motivation of the candidate countries, and we have a variety of examples.
I do need to ask you something there, please, if I may. You say it's a long-term process. Well, it certainly has been for Turkey, for example, where the process has been going on for decades. Also, Georgia, Ukraine and Moldova, which is also on the list of candidate countries, have 20% of their territory occupied by Russia. I mean, is there really any hope for these countries, or is the EU simply dangling a carrot in front of them which will never get eaten?
Well, I think there are reasons to be moderately optimistic. What we are seeing, for example, in Ukraine, is a great deal of motivation, a great deal of enthusiasm and willingness to reform the country in terms of governance, in terms of eradicating corruption, for example, in terms of implementing economic reforms. So I believe we can be positive about Ukraine, and we can be positive about Moldova. I guess we are seeing positive developments there. Perhaps not that much about Turkey. It is a special, particular case. And I'm not quite sure we can say at the moment that Turkey is really willing to become a member of the European Union. It's looking for some sort of a special relationship with the EU. So I wouldn't be very optimistic when it comes to Turkey's membership. But we can do a lot for Ukraine, and this is the country where we see the most determination to implement reforms. And I believe that what the European Union has shown recently is that when there is a will, there is a way. So if there will be political will, both on the side of the EU and Ukraine, to enlarge, a way can be found. So an arrangement can be found, even though some territories of Ukraine are under occupation, as you said.
Right. So in our previous...
of course, quite a lot depends on the situation on the front and on the reforms. So it is difficult to give a date. But if we look at the last 2 years, we can see that the process is proceeding swiftly. So let's hope that it will continue like that.
Right. So in our previous interview, we spoke a lot about public perception. And I wanted to ask you, what are some of the fears that people who are already in the EU, that they may have about possible new members? Some are talking about the Kiev-Warsaw axis that could rival the Paris-Berlin one. Some others, of course, are worried about economy and the financial strain. So what are some of these fears?
Well, I think it is understandable that citizens could be fearful of accepting a country that is waging a war and that is waging a war against a nuclear power. But I think it is up to European politicians to explain to the citizens and to convince them that the European Union has to defend its values. And defending values means supporting Ukraine and accepting it as a member state. So there is a great deal of, I would say, education and promotion of certain ideas in societies. Politicians simply have to explain to the citizens why enlargement is needed. The second thing are economic issues, and obviously member states that receive a great deal of EU financial help, of course, can be worried that some of it will now be redirected towards the candidate countries. And again, I think this is something we have to accept. That once you reach a certain level of development, now it's your turn to share and to support others. So the European Union will have to adjust its policies and share the funds that are limited. The resources are limited, but as I said, the European Union wants to export stability, and exporting stability means supporting candidate countries also in financial terms. So we will have to find a way to share the finite resources in a way that everyone gets a share, everyone benefits.
Understood. But in the last few seconds that we have, one of the challenges, of course, that Ukraine has been facing and accusations that it has been facing is around corruption. And surely that is something that's going to take a while to sort out, isn't it, before they're seriously considered for membership of the EU?
Well, of course, it will, and we have to be quite strict about that and demand progress from Ukraine. And well, of course, it's perhaps difficult to focus on fighting corruption when you are fighting a war, when you are invaded. So, but still, I guess we have the European Union has formulated clear expectations from Ukraine, and I hope there will be progress also on that front. But definitely, the European Union needs to be demanding, and it's not a free ride. Enlargement is not a free ride.
Right. So far, we focused on Ukraine, but what about other countries? Georgia, for instance, right? We just saw what's happening in Georgia with this foreign agents bill, that the country is certainly struggling. So what about their prospects?
Well, I would say situation in Georgia is very complicated. We can see we are witnessing now a power struggle between political forces, and I believe that the population is also divided. Well, I would assume a majority is in favor of closer ties with the European Union, but the situation is not as clear-cut as it is in Ukraine, and at the moment, the country is very unstable, so it will be difficult for the European Union to start accession negotiations before there is some sort of a political stability in Georgia. So, well, it depends on the Georgians to create this stability. As I said, it takes two to tango. Both the European Union and the candidate countries have to prepare at the moment, the situation in Georgia is very unstable. So and it's difficult to predict what direction this may take. But definitely a large group of citizens expect the country to create closer relations with the European Union and would like to become EU citizens, become members of the European Union.
Right, certainly. We've just spoken about Georgia, but also some other countries are struggling. Moldova, for instance, right, with Transnistria and so on. Thank you, sir, for being with us this evening. Melchior
Well, thanks for having me.
Szczepanik.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.